Hi folks, I'm Spencer, and on today's episode of Cult Mania we're looking at probably the most anticipated horror film of October of this year. It was probably the most anticipated horror film of last year. It's Halloween Kills. Right, I'm going to be right up front. I'm not putting any clips from the trailer for Halloween Kills in because I know people are probably quite worried about spoilers for this film anyway. That trailer is absolutely full of them. I'm going to try and avoid as many spoilers as possible, much to the detriment of there are things that I'd like to go into but I can't. I will say it's impossible to talk about anything to do with the story of this one though without discussing the ending of Halloween 2018. Because Halloween Kills is a direct sequel to Halloween 2018, which in and of itself was a sequel that completely ignored every other sequel and was a sequel directly to the original 1978 Halloween. I've said the word sequel too many times. So this film literally picks up on the same night as Halloween 2018. We're at the same Halloween. There's a title card that tells us that's where we are. And if you know how that film ended, it ended with the Strode family trapping Michael in a burning house. Michael don't stay in that house though, and he's back killing people. The Strodes have gone to the hospital, so it's sort of up to the townsfolk of Haddonfield to sort of arm up, join together and take on Michael Myers. That's as much as I'll tell you. Now, one of the best things about Halloween 2018 was all of the Strodes. You know, you had Jamie Lee Curtis returning as Laurie, you had Judy Greer as Karen, her daughter, and then Andy Masjak as Alison, who was Laurie's granddaughter. Their relationship was so good and brought something quite different to Halloween and sort of dealt with trauma in a very interesting way. And I was actually, I was really looking forward to perhaps Alison getting a bit more to do. Masjak is a brilliant final girl, and I think she has a really great career in horror. And unfortunately, I think she's a bit underused here. I think actually all of the Strode women are a little bit sort of poorly served by Halloween Kills. They don't get quite as much to do because for a large part of the film, the film is sort of split. 50% Michael Myers, 20% Strodes, 30% other people in Haddonfield. Notably, you've got Tommy Doyle and Lindsay, the kids that Laurie protected in the original film, now all grown up. And I'll be honest, I could have done without quite so much of them. They aren't as interesting a characters. I don't think the performances are particularly great. And this brings me to an issue that I think the film has. Narratively, it's a bit of a mess. And I think it really opens on its weakest. It puts its weakest foot forward. Opening at a point that I don't think anyone thought this is where we need to resume this story. And it jumps around a lot early on, including a bunch of characters being introduced, a bunch of the events of the original film sort of being relayed to us again, the events of the last film being relayed to us again, and it feels like the film doesn't trust its audience to either remember what was happening in the last film, or it feels almost like they wanted to start where this film gets to about 15 minutes in, but some producer came in and said it was going to have been 2 years since that film came out. People will have forgotten. So they had to shoe in all this dialogue about, just going over events over and over again. And it really just kills the pacing and just kept making me think, just get to the kills. It's called Halloween Kills. Just get to killing things. It lacks focus, and I think the further in the film gets, the better that sort of stuff. It finds what it's about much more. But I really could have done. It starts on such a dodgy footing. I mean, it's weird as well because the scene that the film opens with, unless you'd watched the 2018 film like before you went in, you probably weren't going to be thinking at all about the events that opened this film. So it's just a really odd thing that it both expects you to be so up to date and feels the need to explain everything to you for ages. But I don't want to be too negative because I think as the narrative goes on, it plays into much more of the strengths. I think character is the weakest thing about this film, and I think once it actually gets into more... I guess what I'm getting at is Halloween Kills is the middle film. We know that there is Halloween Ends coming, presumably next year, presuming nothing weird happens. And I think because this is the middle film, this is the action. This is, this is Empire Strikes Back. This is Michael Myers gets to go round killing a bunch of people, and I think just starting off with so much plot and so many new characters being introduced that you go, you're probably going to be dead within half an hour. I don't need so much plot. I get to the murders. I sat through the last film to get all the setup. I don't need 20 more minutes of setup. And I think once it remembers it's called Halloween Kills and that we're in the middle and this is Michael's film basically, that's the pro that comes with sidelining the Strodes, really, is that this is Michael's film and he gets to tater so many people. I think one of the things that, alongside the characters that they created for that 2018 film, that Halloween also really nails Michael Myers. And I think the way that they've interpreted the character, taking all that stuff that Loomis says in the original film about it, he's pure evil. There's nothing, behind his eyes and all that sort of stuff. They've really nailed that and they've managed to make... Because, for me, I love Halloween. I love 1978 Halloween. But for a long time, Michael Myers was like one of my least favourite slasher villains because there's not much personality to him, especially in that original film. I think what they've really managed to do is to turn him into this just unstoppable force in these films, and up in the brutality without going into the camp that you have with Jason or Freddy, and without the empathy that you might have for someone like Leatherface. I think they've made him just this genuinely quite terrifying evil force, and this film really nails that. And I think it sets up so much and is really clever, and I really want to go into why, but I can't because it would be spoilery. But I just think, the kills in this are so brutal and quite inventive in places, and the practical effects, because it all looks very practical. So if it's CGI, it's fantastic. But if it isn't, it's practical and it's brilliant. That stuff works really well. The kills are really, really good. The atmosphere they build around Michael is really so good that it does, if that's the stuff you're going into, and I think, everyone involved in this, David Gordon Green, clearly knows how to shoot Michael and turn him into this, like I said, it's just a force of nature for killing things, and it's so well done. The film looks pretty good. It all takes place on Halloween night, so it's quite a dark film, but at no point was I like, I can't see what's happening, I don't know what that was. It is full of references to other Halloween films, sometimes in the cinematography, sometimes in props, I think sometimes in situations. I think this one is more for die-hard fans of Halloween. There are references to less popular films, and some of the sort of shots and throwbacks are much more, well, they're less obvious than I think they were in 2018. This feels, which again brings into mind that idea that this is clearly made for fans and yet feels the need to explain all stuff. I don't think this film knows who it's for. That's perhaps a thing. Anyway, going back to the visuals, I feel like there's a little bit less of the classic visuals, Carpenter visual style here. Much has been made about like the sort of burning house sequence with Michael Myers. That has one of the greatest shots in a horror film this year. And I think this film has a much more personal, much closer. You don't have all the wides that you got in the last film. You feel much more intimate. And I think, again, because this is much more about Michael, you're more closer to him, you're closer to the violence, you're more in there. It's more intimate and graphic in that. I think, you know, there's a sort of quite propulsive, I guess it's more terror and panic centered, I guess, because we've gone onto a bigger scale, but I think the cinematography has actually brought it in much more, and it's sort of, you just in there being stabbed and thrown around. Michael really likes to throw people and bash people in this film. Anyway, and you get all these little zooms. You know, anyone who's been on this channel knows that I love a zoom. This film's got quite a lot of zooms. Little, you know, people looking at things and it zooms in on them. Zooms. Now, the soundtrack for Halloween Kills is, I mean, it's a Halloween score. It's done by John and Cody Carpenter with Daniel Davis, who did the 2018 one, who've done all of John's Lost Themes albums, and honestly, Carpenter is on an absolute mad one with music at the moment. I mean, Lost Themes 3 that came out this year is easily one of the best albums that came out this year. He really knows how to score a film. I think, you know, these two Halloween scores are some of the best stuff he's done. Yes, you've got, you know, the theme. You have a more sort of operatic version of the theme in this film, which I guess sort of signifies, again, this sort of more intense, mythological version of Michael that we have here. You've got, you know, this one, you get all the tunes that you know from Halloween. You get the dun, dun, dun bit on the piano. You get that little weird sting whenever something vaguely spooky happens, the sort of noise. You get all that stuff, but I think this one plays up. It's a much darker score. You get a lot more of the, I don't know whether it's a synth thing or whether it's a guitar thing. It was in 2018 as well, where it just, every now and again, you just get this vroom sound. It uses that a lot, and I think it sort of, especially in a cinema, it really hits you basally in the chest, and I think it adds this almost drone metal element to the score. It's a much darker, more intense score. It feels like a progression. I feel like 2018 was a lot of reusing those elements that we all know from Halloween that John's done before. This feels much more like a progression, and we're moving slightly away from what we know into this newer territory, this darker, heavier territory. And I really like that. And I mean, there is nothing better really than being sat in a cinema and hearing the Halloween theme come up. It's, you know, it's one of the best pieces of horror music, and it's so simple and it's just brilliant. I'm very aware this review is very rambling, very unfocused, much more so than any other review, and I think that's genuinely because I knew that this film was divisive when I went into it, and when it started, my heart sank. I really thought, oh no, it is it's not going to be very good. And then I slowly settled into the film, and there were still things that were bothering me. And by the time it's finished, and anyone that follows me on Twitter saw that I said it was a mess, and that there was lots of stuff that I didn't like, but there was more stuff that I did like. I very much stand by that it is a mess, and it has far too many ideas, and I think it misses some of the stuff that made 2018 so good. And I think 2018 is still a better film. But, and this is the annoying thing about not being able to talk about spoilers at all, because some of the stuff that I didn't like about the film, some of the dialogue especially, that gets used early on, that feels really trite, and some of the performances feel really unnatural and over the top. Actually, the further from the film I get, the more clever I think they are. And I think they reflect the world that we live in much better. And I think there's Jamie Lee Curtis made a lot about the politics of Halloween Kills. And I don't think it doesn't appear to be a political film at all while you're watching it. But I think actually there are some really interesting ideas. And I think outside of that, when this is Michael Myers killing people and stalking people, and it's the scare sequences and the kill sequences, it's so good because it's nasty. And in some places quite mean-spirited. Some of the people that Michael goes after in this film, you go, Jesus Christ, you shouldn't... It's willing to go after people that I think you wouldn't. And I think it does so well because I think it makes those characters, you empathise with those characters enough. That stuff all works really well. I just wish the film was that little bit more focused and trusted its audience more. So it's a really weird one because I'm very interested to see the film again because it is messy, but I think there are really interesting ideas, and I think it sets up Halloween Ends can be really interesting as long as they stick to the stuff that clearly worked in this. If they get the Michael Myers from this film and they manage to bring back the character work that they did in 2018, it will be perfect. It will be exactly what we want, I think, from these modern Halloween films. They've just got to nail that script and the characters, because just focus it, make it lean. It's almost, the thing is, I feel like there's stuff cut out of Kills. I feel like it's a longer film elsewhere, and but also I'd cut a bunch of it. So I'd probably leave it at the same length, but I'd add in stuff that I feel like was cut and get rid of some of the early exposition stuff because it's just not necessary. If you're going to see this film, you saw the last one, surely, and you almost definitely have seen the original film. We really didn't need a recap of 78, really. But no, I mean, it is not the 5 out of 5 film some people have said it is. It is also not the 1-star film that other people have said it is. It's probably a 4-star, 3.5, 4, that I like more the further away from it I've got. So, yeah. Again, this was just rambling because the film's really confused me. Because, like I said, I just like some of it and don't like other bits. But I think it's good overall. Basically, let me know down in the comments what on earth you thought of Halloween Kills. Where does it sit in the Halloween pantheon? I mean, it's by no means the worst Halloween film, but I don't think it's the best either. Let me know down in the comments. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of me just rambling about films. And I shall see you next time.